the best that we've ever put on for this evening, and we're super excited. We have a lot to get through this evening. It's a very, very packed program, and so with your indulgence, we'll get everybody's attention. And I would now like to call on my chair of our board, our district council for the ULI Toronto, Derek Thorne.
Thanks, Richard. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call our evening program to order. As Richard mentioned, my name is Derek Waring. I'm the Vice President of Development at First Gulf and the Chair of ULI Toronto. On behalf of ULI Toronto's Management Committee and our Advisory Board, I want to welcome you all to our 4th annual Sold Out Meet the Chiefs event. Tonight is a celebration of the synergies between the public and private land and development professionals. It's about city and region building. And it would not be possible without everyone in this room whose generous support has made this possible. We have 35 table sponsors, too many to acknowledge explicitly, but whose names are contained in our dinner program at the tables. Thank you all for your support. I also want to thank tonight's major sponsors. This year we welcome Bombardier as our reception sponsor, and WSP have returned as our panel sponsor. We look forward to hearing from you both later, but truly I want to express our appreciation for your generous support. And a very special thank you to our evening sponsor, Toronto Pearson, whose support as lead sponsor each of the 4 years of this event has been critical to making the Meet the Chiefs event the success that it has become. More importantly, as one of our urban region's anchor institutions, Toronto Pearson continues to step up its region building leadership that extends well beyond the operations of an international airport. I'm looking forward to tonight's fireside chat between Toronto Pearson's Vice President, Stakeholder Relations and Communications, Hilary Marshall, and our featured guest, Dan Doctoroff, CEO of Sidewalk Labs. Thank you, Toronto Pearson. This dinner is a wonderful representation of what ULI is all about, bringing the broadest array of real estate and land use professionals together across both private and public sectors to provide leadership in the responsible use of land and in creating sustaining, thriving communities worldwide. Tonight is especially about the public sector side of this equation. As mentioned, Meet the Chiefs was designed to celebrate our senior civic planners whose leadership literally shapes our region. With over 40 of them in attendance tonight, I'm not going to introduce them all individually, but I would ask that they all stand up to be recognized now. Please stand up. It's great to have you all here. And I do actually also want to, on a personal level and a professional level, want to shout out to Greg Lintern, who's just been appointed as the new Chief Planner for the City of Toronto. Congratulations. As I end my 2-year term as Chair of ULI Toronto, I am proud of the growth of our local district council. With over 1,700 members, we are now one of the largest district councils in the world. To put out a few numbers, last fiscal year we hosted 51 different events. In the first 6 months of this fiscal year, we've already done more than 51 events and had 14 events in March alone. We are driving the dialogue in the city and region, in the region building across the GTA. But our activities go well beyond hosting events. This year, we rolled out Urban Plan, ULI's internationally acclaimed high school-focused program. Nearly 300 Toronto high school students will have received 12 hours of in-class ULI curriculum that exposes them to the challenges and opportunities of building strong communities. We are halfway through our 2nd annual Urban Leadership Program for Mid-Career Professionals, led by our former Chief Planner, Paul Bedford. Emma West, ULI's Chair of Mission Advancement, will speak more about the community impact activities of the ULI District Council later this evening. We could not accomplish all this without our volunteer leadership and our corporate sponsorship, without which we could not deliver on ULI's mission. Building on all this momentum, I am very pleased to announce that Toronto will play host to the ULI Spring Meeting in 2020. The Spring Meeting is one of ULI's 2 signature events, which will bring over 3,000 ULI members from across the world to Toronto in 2020. This event has never been held in Toronto before, so we're very, very excited to be having them coming. Needless to say, it's a very exciting time for ULI Toronto. And now to shift gears for tonight's program. This year, in addition to our typical Meet the Chiefs program, we are very proud to be announcing the winner of the prestigious Heinz Student Competition and the $50,000 prize from amongst a group of 4 final teams who have joined us here this evening. We are honored to be this year's host city for the competition. Our Vice Chair of Mission Advancement, Emma West, will have more on this after dinner, followed by Jerry Hines himself, who's here to announce the winner. It's now my pleasure to welcome Eric Peisel, National Business Line Executive, Transportation for WSP, who will introduce Dan Doctoroff and Hillary Marshall for the fireside chat. Eric.
You can start off with your salads. Feel free. I'm just window dressing, so just go ahead. Salad dressing. Good evening, Dan, members of the council, and the many planners who are celebrating this evening with us. I'm Eric Peisel with WSP. We've been a proud sponsor of this dinner since its inception. And as a fellow planner, as I said, it's great to see the importance planning has been retaking and recapturing our cities. I wanted to take a moment, and I think we can all raise our glasses to single out Richard, Alex, and his team here at ULI Toronto. Fantastic job. So tonight I've been asked to introduce our keynote speaker, Dan Doctoroff, the CEO of Sidewalk Labs. And you know, Sidewalk Labs is really taking an instrumental look at how to really look at our cities. And here in Toronto, we're very excited that they have a project that they're currently looking at. And you know, when I was asked to introduce Dan Doctoroff, I'm very honored for that. But it was funny. As I was walking into the room here, I ran into Joe Barrage, and you know, he told me straight up, you know, Dan Doctoroff is the smartest man he's ever met. So I think there's a great compliment right there on the top. So Dan, before he became the president and CEO of Sidewalk Labs, served as the CEO of Bloomberg LP. Before that, he also was deputy mayor for the city of New York under the Bloomberg administration. And under that administration, he really spearheaded New York's revival after the 9/11 events. Really including the Plan NYC plan, which was a 127-point plan designed to create the first environmentally sustainable 21st century city. In fact, last night I was in an event held by McGill University where they were really actually talking a lot about this plan, and the fact that it actually started looking at the waterfront and the water in the harbor of New York actually as another borough, and really kind of rethinking of the city besides just the land aspects, which was really an exciting piece. Interviewing Dan actually would be Hillary Marshall, who I've actually had the pleasure of chatting with already this evening. She's the Vice President of Stakeholder Relations and Communications at GTAA. Since I'm actually Montreal-based, I use their facilities very, very often. And so Hillary joined the GTAA in 2014. And following the time she spent as Vice President of National Public Relations at Associate at Hill and Knowlton, specializing in strategic counsel on all aspects of communication, government relations, stakeholder relations, communications, and crisis management issues. So I think she's well equipped for the interview this evening. Ms. Marshall has also worked at Direct Energy, the Hudson's Bay Company, and the TSX Group. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Hillary and Dan. The stage is yours.
What do you think, Dan? Are these on now?
I think so.
Get yourself comfortable, get in that hot seat. Dan,
Okay.
welcome back to Toronto.
I'm here basically every week. So it's,
Really?
it's actually, I have to say, I have never been a place where I felt so quickly at home as
Really? Well,
Yeah.
let's test that, shall we? Can you use A appropriately in a sentence? I mean, really?
No, but
We're gonna have to try this again next time.
But I have taken, first of all, I actually grew up in Detroit.
Oh, yes, I know that.
And
I read the book.
And I don't know how many people know this, but you know, Detroit is the only place along the 3,000-mile U.S.-Canadian border that is actually north of Canada.
Showing your knowledge, okay.
And I will admit, I'm going to be turning 60 in a few months. And when I was growing up, we had 4 channels on TV, and one of them was CBC. So I feel almost Canadian already.
Excellent. So just coming back to your childhood in Detroit, your book, Greater Than Ever, which is almost like a love story, your ode to New York and to city building and all the complexity and energy that goes into that. And in the book, you talk about being a child and growing up in suburban Detroit. Your family takes a trip, and you're driving to the East Coast, but along the way, you stop in New York. And you say with great disregard about your future home, I never want to live here. So, flash forward to your role at Sidewalk Labs, where you're reinventing cities, and what would you go back and tell 10, 11-year-old Dan about the future of cities and what's possible?
Well, first thing I would say is never say never. You know, look, I look back on my career and life, and you know, I never expected to live in New York. I never expected to be in finance. I never expected to come up with this stupid idea of hosting the Olympics in New York. You know, or going into government, or running a big company like Bloomberg, or then having the opportunity to team up with an amazing company like Google or Alphabet, to have the opportunity to do something in this incredible city. And so, you know, the lesson that I always try and tell people is you just never know. But, you know, I grew up in a suburb. I always thought that, you know, growing up in a suburb was the way to raise a family. And, you know, there's just different things for different people. I moved to New York, literally dragged there by my wife who took a job in New York. And it took me a while to fall in love with it. But once I did, I fell really hard because I truly love what I think I also love about Toronto, which is sort of the openness and the diversity of the city, which I grew up with the exact opposite. So, you know, look, I'm a big believer in talking about city building in fostering that sense of energy and openness. The single best story anybody ever told me about New York, which I think is really appropriate here too, was by the president of a Japanese bank. And he had run his bank's branches in New York, Sydney, London, Paris, a few other places. And he said, you know, New York is my favorite city in the world. And I said, why? And he said, you're going to laugh at me. I said, no, I promise I won't. He said, because it's the only city in the world, he clearly hadn't been to Toronto, but the only city in the world where I can walk down the street and people ask me for directions. And, you know, I suppressed the laugh, but what he said was really profound, and it's the same thing here, which is, doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what you look like, what you dress like, you feel welcome right away. And, you know, I do think sort of that capacity to be open and attract people from all over creates in the city sort of remarkable energy. And that energy is what creates innovation and propels the city forward. And so I say, anything, it's sort of that dichotomy from the way I grew up to the way I lived most of my adult life. that may impart the single most important lesson. It's about openness, it's about diversity, and encouraging people's talents.
Well, absolutely, Toronto is a city that's built on diversity, just like New York. And so, you talked about the Olympics and momentum in city building. And I don't know that a lot of people realize this, but you mentioned you started out in investment banking. And it was while you were in that profession that I think you went to a World Cup. And everybody's passionate about the World Cup, right? So, but there was something about that experience that you were living in New York and you came out and you said, New York needs something like the World Cup or the Olympics in order to be that catalytic event that would bring people together, diverse interests together, to help build the city. And so outside of bidding on an Olympics, and I'm sure Mayor Tory would shoot us right now if we were about to suggest that Toronto should go after another Olympics, but what else can cities do to get all of those interests aligned?
Well, in fact, in my book, I talk about sort of at least the 4 factors that for us were really helpful in terms of getting a lot of things done after 9/11. The Bloomberg administration came into office literally 3 months after 9/11. The fires were still smoldering at ground zero. None of us had any experience in government. City council, because of term limits, which had been recently opposed, 37 of the 51 of them had not been in government before. And so we had no idea what we were doing. And the city changed a lot over that 12 years, I think mostly for the better. But I talk about sort of 4 things. The first, which is really related to the question, is a catalyst. I think you actually need a catalyst. Now, in our case, the catalyst was in part the Olympic bid, where we came in with a plan to think about the future of the city. The catalyst was also 9/11, which after 9/11, New Yorkers really committed themselves to rebuilding the city and making it greater than ever. But most cities don't want a disaster, obviously, and don't bid on an Olympics or World Cup or whatever. And so, what is it that actually acts as a catalyst? I think it is, at the end of the day, it's leadership. That it's understanding that you have issues, and every place has them, and that you have to deal with them. And great leadership recognizes that you are going to deal with it before it becomes a huge problem, rather than waiting until it does. Developing a creative plan, figuring out important ways to finance it and get it executed, which requires, by the way, great kind of capacity to sell people on the idea. And that, I think, is often what you see in really effective leaders, is that capacity to recognize a problem, develop a creative plan, and figure out how to get it done. And because we don't always have the kind of classic catalysts that force us to take action.
So coming together around a great project or a great opportunity, like we've seen with Waterfront Toronto in partnership with Sidewalk Labs on Quayside, I think a lot of people here in the room tonight are interested to know, they understand what the opportunity is there, but what are we going to be seeing in terms of learnings and in 10 years' time coming from Quayside and Sidewalk Toronto?
Yeah, I think what we'll see is the way forward for cities in the 21st century. I think we will set an example.
Do you have any little tidbits you're going to give us tonight? Any news you're going to share with us?
Yeah, no, I think we'll see a completely different approach to mobility and sustainability and building design and the public realm, and even community and social innovation, because we'll rethink the way a place actually can function. And we think that when you do that and you look at them on a truly integrated basis, what you will begin to appreciate is that we can fundamentally bend the curve on almost every quality of life metric. That we can actually find ways to make housing more affordable. That we can save people meaningful amounts of time. That the environment can actually have a climate positive community. That we maybe can achieve Vision Zero with no traffic fatalities. That we can actually find ways to create greater opportunity for people and do it in an environment that is fun and exciting and interesting. And what we're trying to do and what we're proposing to do, and we spent now several years studying this, is really for the first time find a way to fuse real innovation, which is particularly possible today at the dawn of the 21st century, where we've got this whole set of digital technologies that are now available to us, and great urban design. No one has yet succeeded in doing that, and we don't believe it's easy. It's hard. There's a reason no one has yet succeeded, but we think it's actually possible, and we think it's really possible here. We think if we actually succeed here, then what we can do is show the way for the rest of the world and create here in Toronto a very powerful economic cluster focused on urban innovation.
So you mentioned social benefits, and DMZ had actually written an article about smart cities and the risk of priority neighborhoods, as we call them, not benefiting from or being included in these opportunities created by smart cities. What would you say to that?
I think many of the criticisms of smart cities that they fail to fulfill their potential are absolutely true. And we've literally studied, I think, 150 attempts to create smart cities, to create urban innovation districts, and I would say every single one of them has fallen short of their lofty aims. And they've done that for a lot of different reasons. At its core, though, the reason is because there's really two kinds of skills that are required to actually do this right. One is you've got to respect place. We don't consider ourselves, by the way, to be a technology company. We consider ourselves to be a placemaking company. But that the urbanists, the people who think about cities, plan cities, run cities, build cities, often speak a very different language than the technologists. They operate on completely different time frames. And therefore that lack of communication prevents that integration. We've tried to create a company that avoids those things. But I think it's not just about that. You talk about having the benefits be spread more widely. We're talking about a specific place. But I think one thing everybody should understand about what we're proposing to do with Waterfront Toronto and the city and the province and the national government, and a fundamental assumption underlying what we're trying to do here is that this will be a diverse community. We're not trying to avoid the hard problems. When we set up Sidewalk Labs with Larry Page at Google, the basic assumption that we made on day one was that the community, wherever we did this, and Toronto at that point wasn't even in sort of on the radar screen, was going to be diverse, which we defined as reflecting the socioeconomic and demographic characteristics of the surrounding metropolitan area, wherever we did. Because that meant that we would have to deal with the hard problems, that we would have to show how we can make housing more affordable, how we would have to deal with homelessness, how we would have to deal with medical care for people who are struggling with multiple conditions. And so we believe that by doing something in one place, someplace that's a greenfield, where people don't live today, that we would be able to show the way for other parts of Toronto and for Canada, and by the way, around the rest of the world. And that more than anything is our goal here, is to show that these problems can be addressed, starting in one place and then hopefully reverberating out into other places around the world.
Well, it's really the leading edge in terms of developing a smart city concept here in Toronto, and so you'd expect that there's some distrust, and the jury's still out almost on what this initiative will bring to the city. You know, I'm married to a guy who is scared to have Alexa or Siri in our house because he thinks that they're going to spy on us. So what do you say? It's true. What do you say to people who are distrustful about what smart cities mean?
I think
The use of their data.
Yeah, no, look, I think the concerns that people have expressed about privacy, about the ownership of data, and the use of data are right to raise those concerns. I think we will not be successful unless we satisfy people that the policies and products that we put in place protect them. Now, I'm comfortable that that will be the case because I know how we're thinking about it. I know that we've already formed an advisory board of leading privacy experts here in Toronto and in Ontario, that our partners, Waterfront Toronto, are going to do the same thing. That we're going to be subject to incredible scrutiny over the policies that we ultimately put in place. I also know that we are what we intend to do. We intend to build privacy into the very foundation of every product that we build or deploy here. We don't want to use data to actually commercialize the data. We don't want to sell ads with it. We only want to use data to improve quality of life, and then under very, very thoughtful policies. We're going to develop those policies in the open, and transparency and openness in terms of privacy and the use of data will be at the very foundation of what we do. And by the way, we don't even feel like we have to own the data. We think there are other models for the ownership of data that don't apply in the regular commercial world. So I will make it my personal mission to encourage your husband to actually get comfortable there and want to live.
It's going to take decades. Decades.
I'll work on it.
But do you see other jurisdictions, other cities where they've moved past this kind of discussion about privacy, or?
No. I think, in fact, we're at the very early stages of it. And to be honest, I think one of the great things about this project is that we have an opportunity here in Toronto to figure out the best way forward and do it in a very open way. And it's the Wild West out there in general. We see that every day. This debate has never really taken place in a way that's going to lead to a place. We'd like to be the first, and we'd love to see this city looked to as the example for the world.
That's fantastic. We want that too, obviously. Now, you've worked on both sides in the private sector as well as in the mayor's office in the city of New York. And so in terms of building understanding, because obviously it's an important partnership between both sides to move projects like this ahead. But as you sit here and this room is filled with people from both sides, do you have any advice or thoughts about how we can move ahead together, how we're going to be able to find that groove?
I think in order to do this successfully, this is going to require a complete partnership between the private sector and the public sector. And one of the great things about coming here was that in Waterfront Toronto, you actually had an entity that has 15 years of experience with three stakeholders, the three levels of government, and has been working along the waterfront successfully for that time, thanks to great public servants like John Campbell.
That's how John got his gray hair.
No,
Oh, John saying he lost his hair to it. Oh, God.
but it also has to exist in all three levels of government, and that's why we have started to work so collaboratively with the city, and we're thrilled that Greg is now been named to his position, and but at all three levels of government. But it also has to involve the public. We really do see the development of the plan, and 2018 is the year to develop the plan, as a process of co-creation with the public sector and the public. It's why we in Waterfront Toronto just a few weeks ago announced a public engagement agenda that has literally 100 different events on it. We had a public engagement discussion 2 weeks ago that had 800 people attend. And that's literally one of what will be hundreds of 100 events over the course of the year where we're soliciting people's ideas, we're trying to explain where we think it is. We'll go through this iterative process to develop the plan, and hopefully we'll come back with something that will be no surprise to anybody, that'll be incredibly substantive and hopefully very exciting. I should point out that in our deal with Waterfront Toronto, we have committed to spend $50 million over the course of this year. And as Waterfront Toronto, Will Fleissig constantly reminds me, that's American dollars, not Canadian dollars. But to develop a plan, and at the end of the year, if you don't like it, we go away. There is no obligation, and why is it that we would be so crazy to do something like that? Because based on all the work that we've done over the last several years, we are convinced that we will be able to excite people, that they'll be excited by what we can demonstrate to the world, will be excited by what we can do here, and that people will really be on board with it. But if not, then we go away.
That's incredible. Now, tonight we are going to learn the winners of the Heinz design, the student design competition. And these students have come from all over, and they've looked at a complex urban site, and they've come up with their ideas. So what, I guess as we close, what advice would you have for these young people who are starting out their careers in city building?
I would say, first and foremost, and I know everybody in this room who in one way or another participates in city building will share this view, that there is nothing more rewarding than being able to contribute to the place that you love and make it greater. And that requires extraordinary skills, remarkable patience, enduring intense frustration. But I know I've had literally 5 different careers. There is nothing more rewarding than ultimately seeing a place that you love and that you're committed to be greater than it would have been otherwise. And so, you know, look, one piece of advice that I will impart, this is my general view about government and coming in, for example, from the private sector. You know, a lot of people who come into government, for example, from the private sector find it incredibly frustrating. My advice, or my experience said that in order to be successful, you have to be able to operate on 2 speeds at the same time. You have to be patient because there is process for everything, that there are just so many constituencies that have to be touched all the time. And that's right, because these are important things that last for a very long time. But at the same time, if you don't act with a sense of urgency, that everything dies of its own weight because it's so complicated. And so finding that capacity to operate on those two speeds is critical. I will say another thing, lastly, and I said this to Mayor Tory when I met him the first time, and he's been incredibly encouraging. But I said the one thing that you will expect out of us, because we have been in your shoes, is that we will be humble and we will be respectful, because we aren't the experts on Toronto. We have a lot to learn, and we are going to listen and we're going to reflect that. I think that advice for anybody who wants to engage in city building is really critical.
Dan, thanks very much. One last question. It's going to be the trickiest question of the night. You're going to alienate some part of the room, I promise you that. Leafs, Jays, Raptors.
One of the three?
Come on, pick one. Pick one.
Well, it's definitely not going to be the Blue Jays.
Oh. See?
Because I'm a really, people will hate me for this, dyed-in-the-wool Yankee fan. Now, I happen to hate...
Any buns on the table? Love them.
I happen to hate both the Knicks and the Rangers. And therefore, I'm totally open to falling in love with both the Raptors and the Leafs, although I recognize it has been since 1967.
You had to go there.
So, you never know, though.
Thanks so much, Dan. Great.
Well, that was a really terrific interview. I think my favorite fireside chat ever. And what a crazy question to finish on. Poor Dan. I have to say, just very quickly, one of the things that I think makes us proud as city builders in Toronto is how often we find ourselves at the forefront of city building, the forefront of innovation, the forefront of land use, and for Sidewalk Labs to be picking Toronto to continue that frontierism of city building is a great honor, and I think a fitting thing for our city to be once again at the forefront. So really honored to have you in the city. I think that the reception you receive this evening is very reflective of that warmth that you were describing at the beginning of your interview. So thank you, Dan, and Hillary. That was an amazing interview. You got another career in journalism coming in. I thought it was terrific. So thank you both. And I'm going to say something I've never ever said at a fireside chat before in the 4 years that we've hosted this event, and that is that we're ahead of schedule. So that's amazing. So for the next 45 minutes or so, enjoy your dinner, and we'll return for the very exciting, much anticipated $50,000 US. That's a very different denomination. Prize for the Heinz competition. So this is an exciting thing to end on. So enjoy your table conversations. Thank you, Chiefs, for leading them. Okay, bye. Provided to us by our friends from Woodbine Entertainment, who are here tonight, and it's a ticket to the Queen's Plate, and we have randomized a draw think it would have cracked this open in the bottle. All right. So, Colleen Dignam from the Carpenters Union, Local 27, is the winner. Congratulations, Colleen. We'll sort out the delivery of those tickets too. So now it is my great honor to bring up Emma West, Chair of the Mission Advancement for ULI Toronto, to kick us off for the final.
Good evening, everyone. It sounds like there's been some great conversations in the room. I hope you've been enjoying the evening. I know our fireside chat was a great moment for us all, and we love having this Meet the Chiefs event. As Richard mentioned, I'm Emma West. I'm a partner at Bousfields. I'm also the Vice Chair of ULI Toronto District Council and the Chair of Mission Advancement. So in that role as Chair of Mission Advancement, I get really into what the mission of the Urban Land Institute is, which is the responsible use of land. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk to you about some of the great things that ULI Toronto has been doing over the past couple of years related to our mission. So community impact is one of the areas of focus that has really grown within ULI Toronto as our membership has grown as well. And many of you have probably heard about our Electric Cities initiative. We've had a couple of symposiums over the last couple of years where that has been the focus to talk about real communities, how we move through our communities, placemaking, and how we integrate technology into that. So it's great to have Dan here to speak on those matters as well. We've had a lot of focus on our community impact over the last year with our outreach committee working really hard. Some of the things that we are doing right now on a pro bono basis are working with the United Way on their Bridletown Community Hub. And also, for the past few years, we've been working with the Village of Weston on their revitalization. We had a technical advisory panel there a few years ago, and we've been kicking off some additional work there, and you'll hear more about that in the months to come. Another part of our focus has been regional growth, and again, this Meet the Chiefs event is great because we're talking about all of the chiefs in our broader region. Many of them are here tonight, as you've heard. And so one of the things that we've focused on over the last year is having town hall sessions across the 905, where ULI has gone in and helped to facilitate the discussion and a panel to focus in on issues related to transit and city building and community building within our 905 communities. And we've had a lot of success in places like Pickering and Burlington in recent weeks, and we're hoping to continue that as well. Another point on community impact and our mission is our diversity and inclusion initiatives. I'm a proud WLI Women's Leadership Initiative champion. I'm a former co-chair of that as well. And we've obviously done a lot to raise the profile of many of the great women in our industry, as well as to focus on how to have more women within ULI in management roles, leadership roles, and even on our panels. And we've done a great job of that, but we want to take it to the next step and really focus on diversity more broadly than just men and women. We live in a very diverse community, and we want to make sure that ULI is representing that. So as a part of that, we are partnering with RealPAC to develop a comprehensive diversity and inclusion strategy for ULI Toronto. And we know that we're going to be leaders in this because of the community that we have now. And so we are going to lead within ULI on this diversity initiative. So those are just some examples of how we as ULI Toronto are working to advance the mission and stepping up to really deliver leadership within our community related to the responsible use of land, but also within our industry as a whole. So now I will get you to the final part of our program. As you know, we have the prestigious Heinz competition, that $50,000 American award. There have been some great submissions, and we're really excited to have been selected to be the host of this process that allows students from across multiple disciplines to collaborate and work with each other to come up with a concept for the site. So without further ado, I'm going to ask the Heinz Competition Jury Chair, Carl Weisbrod, to come up to the podium to initiate the final awards. But first, we will have a video that you'll watch, and then Carl will come up and speak. So thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Emma. I've had the privilege of chairing the jury process, and it's really been my distinct pleasure to be here with all of you in Toronto supporting this program. We've had quite a day today. After an extensive day of student presentations, the jury finished an interesting and extensive debate about the different finalist proposals. And we have reached a decision for the final part of the program. And before we announce the winner, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. First of all four of these teams just did an amazing, amazing job. We were just in awe of both their production and their presentation. And if there was one thing that the jury was unanimous on, it was that none of us on the jury could have done what these teams did when we were in graduate school, I can tell you that. And I just ask first for the members of the jury to stand, because they really deserve a round of applause. I know there's I will say that the jury was, however, somewhat divided over whether we could have done what any of these four teams could do in our current capacity as adults. And I think the vote was very, very close on that issue. Before we announce the winner, we just want to say a word about each of these teams. And I'm going to start, and my colleagues here will mention and talk a word about some of the other finalists. I'll just first talk about Eastern Link, which was presented by Georgia Tech. And if the Georgia Tech Eastern Link team, wherever you are, would stand up. And I will say that all of us felt that the Eastern Link Georgia Tech team did really an amazing job on showing how this site, those of you who've seen the boards know this is the BMW site, how it fits into the fabric of Toronto. I think they made an extraordinary presentation on how this fits into the urban fabric. And they also really did quite a good job on showing how buildings, how the adaptive reuse of buildings on this site could work. We were a little unclear on their approach to how immediately value on the eastern part of the site could be deployed on the western part of the site, and I guess a little skeptical about Toronto government paying for all the infrastructure on the site, but who knows? Maybe they're a lot smarter than we are. But that was the Eastern Links team from Georgia Tech, and let me ask my colleague Leslie Wu to talk about Tom.
First of all, it's difficult to reduce the amount of work that you've put into in the last several months into a few words, but I will try. So I'm going to talk about the Georgia Tech second submission called Absorption. And if the team, where are you? Are you, oh, there you are. So first of all, I think the jury totally appreciated the commitment of the Absorption team to sustainability and the forward-thinking aspect of the concept, because of course climate change is one of the challenges of our century, and we embraced the vision that you put forward in the proposal. The jury felt that the project needed a bit more work on the how to move from where we are today to the vision that you put forward. And there were suggestions about thinking about examining the right mix of uses in the first phases of the proposal in order to begin to generate revenue early on. So for those developers in the room, we know how important that is, and we thank you very much for that submission. And I'll introduce Megan, who will talk about the next one.
So I'm here to introduce the University of Maryland team entitled Don River Landing. So if that team could please stand and be recognized. So this was a team that took the themes of enrich, revitalize, and connect to describe a cultural district at its heart on the east side of the Don River, centered and anchored by literary culture, performance culture, and visual culture as the first phase for a multi-phase and multi-use development, of which 27% of the housing described in this proposal was earmarked for affordable housing. I think the highest percentage of any of the teams in the final, which is a very ambitious and very laudable ambition for a student competition and for Toronto in this day and age. There was also a market that was to be animated through the year and through the week, just adjacent to the Relief Line subway, which we all hope will be coming soon to our neck of the woods. There were a number of concerns, however, with the jury around the phasing strategy and the reliance upon the cultural district as the catalyst in phase one, and just how the money would work in terms of making those facilities possible and sustaining them prior to a significant residential population being developed. But all in all, we were very inspired and excited about their team, and they presented so well. It put us all really to shame. So congratulations, and last but not least, Paul to introduce the last team.
Okay, I have the pleasure of highlighting the last team, which was Montage from Cornell University. I don't know where they are, but stand up. Some of the attributes of their scheme were really, I guess, can be summarized as making bold and simple connections and creating a new piece of city east of the Don River. Some of the features of that included a strong public realm, Central Park, open space, grid network of streets and blocks, and decking over the Don Valley Parkway to bring the public realm right down to the river to create a totally different image there. Also, strong new pedestrian links across the river to Corktown Common Park and the West Onlands. One other feature was what they called the missing middle housing concept. The scale of mid-rise was very strong in their submission with unobstructed views to the downtown. And they also had a recognition for the opportunity to recognize First Nations in this site. Some of the areas we thought for improvement, two main ones, I guess, were adjustments to the block size to facilitate maximum opportunity for development options through block connections, some flexibility needed there, and greater attention to the road frontage treatment adjacent to the new GO rail station, and especially grade level conditions. They were inspiring, as all the teams were. They were all fantastic, and I think our future is in great hands with these young people. Thank you.
So we don't get to actually announce the winner. that honor really goes to Jerry Hines. And let me invite up Ralph Boyd, who's the head of ULI Americas, and he can introduce the esteemed Mr. Hines.
Thank you so much, Carl. Thank you and the jury for your incredible work over the course of not just the last couple of days, but for the last several weeks. Really appreciate what you've done to bring this competition to life. What a great place to be on an April evening. I am so happy to be here in Toronto. And as Carl alluded to, my singular responsibility this evening is to bring Jerry Hines up here to announce the winners of the Hines competition, which I view as the Stanley Cup, the Super Bowl, the Grey Cup of urban design competition. Stanley Cup, Grey Cup, I ought to get some credit for that. So Toronto Street Cup for that. But anyway, that's my role, is to assist the iconic, the great Jerry Hines in introducing the winners. But before I do that, because Toronto is such a great place generally, but particularly for ULI and the work that gets done here on behalf of ULI and the communities in the greater Toronto area, before I do that, I just want to thank a few people. And those people are Derek Goring, who is the district council here at ULI Toronto, Emma West, the Mission Advancement Chair, the dynamic Richard Joy, the Executive Director. And I also want to thank Tony Medeiros, who is notable for two reasons. Number one, he championed bringing this competition here to Toronto. That's worthy of praise, but what is more worthy of praise is the fact that he endured 2 hours last night with me at dinner. Anyone who can do that is strong, compelling, and resilient. So anyway, thank you for all. Getting it done here in Toronto is evident by the fact that we're here tonight honoring the winners of the Hines competition. And it is also one of the reasons why the spring meeting, the ULI spring meeting, will be here in 2020. And I don't have a crystal ball, but I feel pretty confident in saying that in 2020, when it's over, we will be saying that was the best spring meeting we have ever done. There will be more to come for Toronto and much more to come for ULI Toronto. So I thank you, Derek. I thank you, Richard, Tony, and Emma. I thank you for your leadership. I thank you for your volunteer member leader teams. And Richard, your great staff here. This is ULI. You've grown membership. You've grown programming in terms of volume, depth, and substance. You've engaged more members, delivering more mission. And as Emma pointed out, you are having an impact on our communities. And at the end of the day, it really is about impact. Are we making a difference in the world? Are we transforming communities? Are we adding to the quality of people's lives? Are we making our cities better? And it's a resounding yes, because of the work that you all are doing. And I want to recognize that and thank you for that. Listening to me, and I'm tired of listening to me. So the way you escape people being tired of listening to you is to bring an iconic figure up on stage and then play Vanna White to that person. So the Hines competition is one of the most compelling things that we do at ULI each year because it is enjoyable, but it's also meaningful, and it reflects the core values of ULI, which are, among many, many others, the interdisciplinary learning and teaching of practices in our trade to make a better and more vibrant and a more responsive real estate community for the people that live in the communities in which we live, work, and serve. So Jerry Hines is the reason we have the Hines competition. He is an iconic figure in real estate, but he's also one of ULI's most distinguished leaders. We have an organization full of distinguished and esteemed leaders, but Jerry Hines is at the top of that distinguished pyramid. So Jerry, would you join me, and I will play, Vanna White has several advantages on me, but I will. And I have corrupted the envelope by opening it. I thought it would make it a little easier, but you get to announce the winner of this year's 2018 Heinz competition.
Well, it's just wonderful to be here again, to see these bright young students that have come forth with some outstanding ideas and projects. The project, Montage, Cornell University is the winner.
Would the Cornell team come on up?
Outstanding group this year, and I think that we'll look forward to some other highly competitive and look for new winners next year. This is an outstanding group for this year. Thank you.
While they're taking pictures, I'll say a couple of things in conclusion. When I was talking about introducing the winners, I used the term winners, plural, and it was intentional, it wasn't a slip, because these 4 teams are the final 4 finalists. This was the final 4. So can we have a round of applause for our other 3 teams? Thank each and every one of you deeply for being here and supporting us in our mission. I would just note as we leave the stage, Cornell is a hockey school. You may remember somebody named Ken Dryden went there, so I know that's Montreal, not Toronto, I get it, but it underscores it is a hockey school. And an urban design school as well.
Responsible for government affairs, and I have the pleasure of making some concluding remarks. But I think I would like to congratulate the Cornell University team. I think all the proposals were great, very impressive, but that's quite an accomplishment. I think, on behalf of my colleagues, I have some of my colleagues here this evening. I think it's great to be here among yourselves. And it's great to be able to support this evening's event. For us as a global supplier of mobility solutions, what we're seeing all over the world is the emergence of mega cities, of globally connected cities. And on the strength of the growing middle class and the strength of the rate of urbanization, we are, I think, in many ways, participant in city building with the mobility solutions that we're providing. So on average, every day, we transport with our systems 500 million cities, people in many different countries. We have projects in 70 different countries, and we have our aircraft operating all over the world. Every 3 seconds, we have Bombardier aircraft taking off and landing. So we do think that we have a sort of a unique perspective into these global cities. But I think really what I wanted to say is we're all here, I think, because we have here in Toronto one of those global cities. And as Dan pointed out, I think it's a tremendously open, diverse city, innovative city, educated city that we have here in Toronto. And for us, of course, when you think about our company, we supply transit systems for TTC, Metrolinx, Go Transit. We supply aircraft to the likes of Border, Jazz, also WestJet Encore that they operate from the Island Airport, from Pearson Airport. But also we employ people. As a matter of fact, 75% of our employees in this province, they're in the Greater Toronto area. So that's 4,500 people. We manufacture here, and we're part of the innovation ecosystem as well. So we're very proud, and today I think it was a great opportunity to meet with a number of stakeholders, with city planners. I would like to thank the city planners for joining us and having the kind of conversations around what the future looks like and how stakeholders like us can commit for the next 20 years, the next 30 years in this great city. I would like to congratulate Richard and your team as well. I think it's a great evening and for all the work that you're doing. And I would like also to again congratulate the students and the winner of the Heinz competition. And enjoy the rest of your evening. And thanks again for being with us.
What happens when you have an import who comes in and is supposed to introduce the representative of our lead sponsor. Pierre, thank you so much. Thank you to Bombardier. Everyone in this room has benefited from what your company does. We're benefiting at ULI because of your support of us and our partnership with you. So thank you very much, and forgive the import for not looking at his notes and just running off. So thank you very much.
Okay, that is the end of the program. That was an amazing, amazing night. I want to remind people that the boards for all of the 4 finalists are still upstairs, so if you didn't get a good chance to see them on the way in, please take the opportunity on the way out, because they really are exciting visions. So thank you all. We'll see you next year, probably sooner. We do a lot of programming, as you know. Sorry for all the emails, but we can't help it. See you soon. Bye-bye.